Hello, this is Tim Campbell with TBC Action Coach of Indiana with our Business Spotlight series. The purpose is to interview and promote local business owners throughout our social channels and email database as a way of giving back. This is a free service we're providing because when every small business is strong, then the economy is strong. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Mark. Hey, Mark, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, let's start with introducing yourself and tell us a little bit of your story.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. My name is Mark Hall, Noblesville resident for 34 years, transplant from Southern Illinois, husband to Lisa of 42 years, 3 daughters, if I can get this right, 37, 34, 33, 7 grandchildren. We just had our freshest grandchild, number 7, about 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. If I'd known how much fun the grandchildren part would have been, I would have skipped the children part. My wife and I own a handful of businesses that work in the business process outsourcing, staff augmentation, and labor space. We have a business called Tech Trades that works with skilled tradesmen, skilled craftsmen. So the best way to describe it, these would be the women and the men that take their showers when they come home from work in the evening. Dirty, grimy, electricians, millwrights, carpenters, crane operators. Our original brand from, 1993 is a company called Pinpoint Resources. It does the same thing, but it does it in the white collar space, the men and women that take their showers in the morning before they go to work. So information technology, engineers, database administration, iOS, Android developers, BIM, CAD, CAM, safety people. And then our most recent brand from almost, 6 years ago now, Talent Logistix. Talent Logistix go-to-market strategy is we fix broken workforces. We work with companies all across the United States that come to us with various levels of broken workforces. You talk to 10 CEOs, 9 will tell you, I don't like my workforce, I think it's broken. That keeps us pretty busy. And then in our spare time, when we're not spoiling grandchildren, we're involved with Harbor Shores Church in Noblesville, have been active teaching there. I serve as a deacon there at Harbor Shores, and we have had the pleasure of being there for 22 years. All of our children raised right there in Noblesville, and I think that's kind of the broad brush story for us.
Fantastic. So you've got multiple businesses that you're running. So usually my next question is, give us a little commercial on your business. So I know you just went through a few of them. Which one would you like to highlight in more detail today?
Let's talk a little bit about the business that I mentioned last, Talent Logistix. Talent Logistix, Tim, is designed to fix broken workforces. I'll give you just some of the data points. Society for Human Resource Management will tell you that an average cost to hire a new resource in a business is $8,000. The Bureau of Labor Statistics will tell you that the average turnover within an organization is 50%. In some industries, that goes 70 or 80 or 90%. It can go well beyond. Excuse me, somebody is not playing well.
Well, when you have 6 businesses, the phone's going to have to ring.
The phone is going to ring. It's suddenly at times. So ours is a fairly simple mathematical model. You have a cost to hire resources. You have a cost to identify those resources. You have a cost to employ those resources. And then, of course, you have a cost if those resources go away. Very expensive across the board. So Talent Logistix deals with all 3 of those, and what we do is offer a substantial economy of scale, where we have learned over the years to be able to do this better, faster, cheaper than what most organizations internally can do. We become the private labeled, how do you find them? How do you get them here? How do you keep them here? And oh, by the way, what happens when they leave? I need more to come in and backfill. That's what Talent Logistix does. I'll give you an example. Manufacturing firm that's starting up a new plant, and they had no footprint in Oklahoma at all. Large footprint in the Midwest, no footprint there. They came to us with the problem. We have no idea how to build the workforce, let alone be able to manage it this far remote. A client had asked them to be there. In Cam Talent Logistics, we did all of the hard assessment in terms of data. What's the employment marketplace look like? We had to bring in resources from the area, and we crafted a custom solution to get the plant up and operational within the first 60 days. Construction company that's building 300 new living units brought us in to not only vendor manage all of their subcontractors, but to also bring in direct labor. We offer something in the construction space called labor insurance. It's not unusual for a subcontractor to bring in their A team, and then magically after the first week or two of the project, the A team's got to go to another gig and start the next gig, and we'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks, leaving the property owner to sit there and twiddle their thumbs, or worse, they're dealing with the C team or the D team who comes in to try to get the project on track. Well, by allowing Talent Logistics to operate and run all of those vendors through us, we deliver labor insurance. If that project falls behind, they have to take labor from us, and we have an ample supply. Interesting value prop, Tim. We have over 57,000 tradespeople that have worked for us, not in a database, that have actually worked engagements. Over 340,000 engagements we've worked in almost 30 years. 3,000 white-collar professionals that have worked for us, not some name in a database. These are people we've actually had live experience with. Talent Logistics taps into a talent pool that most people run away from. There are 20 million people that work in the gig economy today. Think Uber, think Lyft. And these are eminently qualified people that just don't want to take a permanent position and will never take a permanent position ever again. We tap into them. It doesn't mean they can't come and work and be productive and be excellent resources. It just means you're never going to own them. Right. Well, Talent Logistics teaches our clients that every organization has a natural line. Above this line, the organization, the resources have intellectual property knowledge, they have travel knowledge, they know the business, and the business would be irreparably harmed if those people left the organization. So by definition, those people that are above the line then leaves people that are below the line. It doesn't mean they're less valuable as people. It just means they're not as valuable to the organization. We have a mathematical model that we believe will prove that those folks that are below the line actually need to be in a variable model. So you can take those resources and plug them in. When you look at 50 to 100% turnover, when you look at an $8,000 cost per hire, when you look at rising unemployment costs, if they come to work for you and they leave, your unemployment cost ticks up and continues to tick up on everybody that you continue to employ for years in the future. Same thing is applicable with work comp. So on the work comp side, one person gets injured, you're overpaying for the rest of your employees, where in my model, we spread it out over literally thousands, in some cases, tens of thousands of resources in order to minimize the cost. So I say all of that to land the plane. Talent Logistics is the easy button for labor. Where we fit and fit well is in that $50 million space and down. People that just, here's the way I typically describe it. When you went out trick-or-treating for Halloween, you probably didn't dress up and go out knocking on doors pretending to be a recruiter. That's not what people went to school for. I want to be in the manufacturing business, the construction business, the technology business. The last thing I want to do is be on the phone Saturday night, Sunday night, talking to a whole bunch of people to try to line them up to interview them, to be able to get them in to come to work for my company. That's not what I want to do. Well, we become the easy button. If you remember the old Staples easy button, that's what Talent Logistics is for labor and workforces. And it's easy to remember. We fix broken workforces. That's a simple message.
I love it. So Mark, what's been the greatest impact that COVID has had on your business?
So we were off 52%. The immediate pushback was projects got delayed. Then it flipped back around. Our business does very well in a recessionary time because people don't want to have permanent employees. COVID specifically has given us the opportunity to have a lot of discussion about the fallacy of permanent employment. And I talk very transparently about this. There are lots of folks that disagree with me. but let me give you some statistics to back it up. Recent surveys indicate that 33% of all the active employees in your organization are looking for a new job. That's today. So 1/3 of your people. We already know that you're going to have turnover of 50 to 80%, but 1/3 of your people are actively, not just passively fishing, actively looking for a new job today. So with COVID, that brings that to the forefront. The people have become less and less and less happy with employers. They like the freedom of being able to work at home. Many of them have jumped into the gig economy. They've added, they're driving for DoorDash, or they're driving for Lyft, or they're doing side gigs, side hustles is what my children call it, in order to augment their income. What that tells me is they're disenfranchised with traditional employment models. The fallacy of permanent employment is that I'm going to go hire them like my dad did, and they're going to go work for 40 years, going to get the gold watch, and they're going to leave. That doesn't happen anymore. You're kidding yourself if you believe that's true. We have a prospect. This prospect did not turn into a client. They employ about 1,400 people, and 3 years ago, they turned over 800 of them.
Wow.
And I showed them the math, the exact math we've talked through. And the response was, but we've always done it this way. I talked to the CFO very candidly. We have a great relationship and are able to be very transparent, and said, you realize you're in the staffing business. You're not in the XYZ business. And he dropped his head, and then he looked up and he goes, yes, I guess you're right. They build all of this infrastructure, millions of dollars of infrastructure, and then they're still turning over 800 people at $8,000 on average per hire. You can do the math. And they've already got a fixed infrastructure of multiple 7 figures just to churn that machine. The fallacy of permanent employment exists. Yes, there are always exceptions. Will you find about 1/3 of the people that will still work and stay there through thick and thin? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But I argue that the vast majority of people are either actively looking for a new job, or they haven't talked to the right recruiter yet. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So for the data that I produce, that number is somewhere in that 70% range. You have about 30 that will be diehard loyalists regardless. And then the balance of them, they're available for the highest bidder. They're available for the right situation. And then, of course, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Fair enough. So, Mark, what is 1 or 2 actions that you've taken during COVID to pivot to ensure that your business model continued to be strong, and share one of those with us and tell us how that's been working for you?
Sure, happy to. When you and I were chatting off camera before we started, we talked a little bit about our food pantry. It's our corporate charity, our why. We leaned into our why. We trusted in God, and we leaned into our why even more. If you go to our website, there's a little grocery bag icon up in the far right corner that you can click on to get to our charity website, or you can just go to feedingteam.org. But we leaned into it. We felt that we were firsthand witnesses to a lot of people that were hurting. We launched in the middle of the pandemic our first 6 free outdoor food pantries, and they were rushed to get them out because where they're being built, the school was going to be closed down, and we weren't going to be able to get the pantries for months due to COVID. So we leaned into it and went to work scurrying to get the first 6 pantries out. And all we could do with it was we launched it with microwave popcorn and Gatorade. That's all we had. And we got them out the door. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Doing good in the community leads to good business. And we saw it become, the flywheel begin to spin as we did more and more and more with pantries. More and more organizations reached out and said, how do I be a part of that? More and more organizations saw the difference. They saw the why. In my business, there are hundreds of staffing firms. There aren't firms that do what we do with Talent 360. So that's been a huge differentiator for us. We've leaned into Talent 360, but you asked me to limit it to 1. So I'll pull it to just the pantries. we leaned in and stepped on the gas for doing what's right for the community and helping hungry neighbors have access to food that they otherwise wouldn't have. And the phone started ringing, and people, hey, I want to be a part of that. I now understand the purpose behind this. The why makes a difference. I can go to a dozen companies to get people, but I can only go to one company to get your why. I want to be a part of that. That's unique. That's special. That's different. And it really set us apart in the middle of a pandemic that now we have calls from organizations. Well, we had a company in Las Cruces, New Mexico that built a pantry. We built one in Oklahoma with a client. We have clients reaching out, prospects reaching out saying, man, that's pretty cool. If I can shift dollars that I'm spending somewhere else and shift them into your model, and it can help people and feed people in the inner city Indianapolis and feed people that are hungry throughout Hamilton County, I want to be a part of that. And now requests from Boone County, Madison County, Marion County, Hendricks County, of all organizations that want to be able to be a part of this. So the direct answer to your question is we leaned in heavily. We trusted in the Lord. We leaned in heavily to what we knew we were supposed to do. And we leaned heavily on talent logistics. And we've been promoting that model quite heavily throughout, 7 different states. So anyway, you asked me to limit it to one, so I had to at least slide in the commercial for talent logistics at TLX.
Well, I love the one that you shared, Mark. That is just incredible how God is using you and your company and the ripple effect that it's having to make such a tremendous impact in a very trying time for many folks. So thank you for leaning into that and following what God has been calling you to do. That's awesome.
It is clearly a God thing. It is clearly a God thing. It's not a Mark thing.
So second last question here, Mark. I'll be getting your contact information and your website and all that so that folks can link through and find out more about your company as well as more about your charity. But is there anything else that you'd like to make sure that we add for listeners today that we haven't talked about yet?
Sure, a couple of things. Again, the distinction of the brands is important. So we offer 2 different staff augmentation brands. So that's traditional staff augmentation that we compete in the marketplace. Tech Trades is a staff augmentation brand. Pinpoint is a staff augmentation brand. Skilled Trades on this side and White Collar on that side. So just specifically for staffing, these would be apart from the talent logistics offering. I mentioned earlier off camera, over the years, we have developed 57,000 tradespeople that have worked for us. The value of that alone makes our phone ring. You have access to people that we don't have access to. We put traveling tradespeople to work all across the United States every year. The same thing holds true on our white collar side with 3,000 resources that have worked engagements for us. That is a unique value proposition. Most of our competitors will go, they'll run an ad on Indeed, or they'll do something on Zip, and they'll wait for someone to approach them. We have those same opportunities as well, but we start from a foundation of the people that have worked for us. We then move into a 50 million candidate database. That's ours. It's not Dice, it's not Indeed, it's not Monster, it's not Career Builder, it's ours. And then we can begin to mine that for the talent that you need. All of those same tools are available for talent logistics, but we didn't spend any time talking about the staffing models. There are clearly times where staffing is a better solution than talent logistics. Absolutely acknowledge that, we get that. So I wanted to at least park on that value proposition for a moment and let your audience know that we have an abundant supply of people. It's always a turn of inventory. This week it might be 15 carpenters. Next week it might be 8 electricians. The week after that it might be 10 millwrights. But that inventory in our model turns every day. And with the footprint we have, doing business in 25 to 30 states a year, usually, it's playing chess and moving pieces all across the board. The earlier we are engaged, the better job we can do. If we know you've won a project that's going to begin in September, call us now. Let's start planning now. It's frustrating when we get to August 15th and a client says, oh, I need 45 people beginning the Monday right after Labor Day. We're much better when we're allowed to be a strategic partner. We're much more effective and can deliver the resources in the capacity when and where you need them if we're engaged early. And when people do the math, it's often a significant cost savings to use our service over hiring them directly, staffing or Talent 360. Again, we fit really well in that $50 million to $5 million space. I don't have a bunch of infrastructure. I can go bid projects that I wouldn't otherwise have gone after because you can bring me 50 more people. One of our reference clients, we started with them, they were $18 million a year, and we worked with them for 14 or 15 years until they sold. They were at $80 million when we were done with them. They never had more than 40 full-time employees the entire time. At its largest, we had 500 people working for them, bidding projects, executing on projects that were 10 times what they could go after if they were just doing it from their own full-time employees. So our model allows organizations to grow rapidly. I think that's one of the things that's very attractive to that $50 million to $5 million space. We can help those organizations grow, whether it's Talent 360 or whether it's a staff augmentation.
Awesome. So Mark, here's an interesting question. It's been said that smart people learn from their mistakes and wise people learn from the mistakes of others. So what's a mistake that you've made along the way that you'd be willing to share with us so that other entrepreneurs can learn from your experience?
Oh, sure. Do you have like 3 hours? My mistakes are significant. I have learned so much from my mistakes. I have learned so much from the mistakes of others. So I'll share just a couple of tips. One of them would be something that's a real easy check for almost anybody in your audience. It's very rare that folks understand that they may be subject to a workers' compensation audit. It's often the case that your audience would not understand that their employees have been misclassified. And so let's just take the first example. They come back in and they do an audit at the end of the year. If you don't have representation at that audit, if you don't have good job descriptions and the ability to walk through what those job descriptions are, they're going to rate your cost at the absolute highest price point that they can. So for an example, there are a dozen different types of electricians that can work in the world. And there's a work comp code for those electricians. But it changes if they're on a ladder. It changes if they're on a lift. It changes if you're on a roof. And it certainly changes if you're 7,000 feet underground working in a copper mine. I have that firsthand experience. So if you're not paying attention to that, they come back and audit you at the end. And if you don't have the data to refute or to support what the work was, guess what rate you're going to get charged? The very highest rate, and you're going to write a substantial gotcha check to the work comp carrier. So there are hidden savings inside of that. When we go in to do an assessment, it's not unusual for us to find 7% cost savings between the workers' compensation premiums that you're paying and the unemployment insurance that you're paying. It's either overrated, and in one case, the very worst one I've ever had, they had an experience mod of 4. And what that means, and this was on their unemployment insurance, what that means is if you're going to pay 10 cents 100 for your workers' comp premium, it just became 40 cents. If you're going to pay 70 cents per 100 for a risky job, it just became $2, 4 times that 70 cents. If you're paying $10, it just became $40. Right. It's one of those things that tends to get swept under the rug, but it eats away at your margin. It eats away at your net profit unless you pay attention to it. And more times than not, HR is worried about administration and handbooks and filling the next job, and nobody's paying attention to that subtle little sucking noise of money that's coming out of every payroll, known as your workers' compensation insurance and known as your unemployment insurance. So that's just one. We have several dozen, but I've made lots of mistakes. I've learned much more from the mistakes of others. You're right. There's some wisdom, but knowledge and having my fanny kicked from making some of my own mistakes. I like the way my accountability group, I've at least made 50.1% of the decisions right, or we wouldn't be here.
Right.
But I'm an active member of Truth at Work. That's the Christian CEO organization throughout the country, and I have learned from the roundtables and learned from the experiences of lots of folks that have gone before me, whether they're in the construction business or the technology business, or we've got a guy in my group that cleans X-ray shields for a living, kind of a unique niche. I learned as much from the guy who walks in with the towel wiping his hands off, the guy that runs the machine shop. I've learned as much from him as I have from the CEO of the $100 million information technology consulting firm.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So Mark, just wrapping up here, tell us what's been most inspiring to you during all the craziness of the past year?
Oh, again, do I have 3 hours? I'm going to go back to my go-to, the inspiration of when we deliver food to the pantries, and Lisa and I deliver food on Fridays, unless I have meetings, and we do it on Saturdays. We have had the opportunity to meet about a dozen people who just happen to be shopping at a pantry when we're loading it. We've also had the opportunity to see a number of people that are contributing into the pantries. These pantries are take what you need, give what you can models. The thing that has been the most inspiring for me is to watch parents teach children the importance of generational giving. It's not all about the almighty dollar. And if we were in person, I'd do a much better visual of this, but we were at a pantry at Morris Beach Park in Noblesville. And we were loading the pantry on a Friday, and up pulls a fireman, like one of those big SUVs, an inspection truck. It wasn't a fire truck, but it was like their fire investigator. Big, tall, thin man gets out. He had to be 6'8". Out of the back seat jumps out a small, she couldn't have been 7 or 8 years old, small young girl. And dad's wearing a ball cap. And when we see people, we will walk away. We don't want to be an intrusion. So she gets out of the back and she picks up a jar of pickles. And I'm not talking about a jar of pickles. This was one of those big, 24-inch glass. And it took everything this young lady had to bring this thing up and swing it back and forth as she's walking up, and she throws it up on one of the shelves in the pantry. And then she looks up at Dad. And the satisfaction, the father-daughter relational, however you want to describe that, it was first of all, it was emotional. But to see someone that I'll never know his name, I'll never know the child's name, but to see them giving back, it embodies neighbors serving neighbors. And to watch a dad teach a daughter, and we get to be a part of that. And it ties back into business. If we weren't able to do business, we wouldn't be able to fund this, and we wouldn't be able to put food in the pantries or build the pantries and be able to help thousands of neighbors. But it was so inspiring to see that I'll never know these people's names, and I don't need to know their names. To see a father teach a young child the importance of taking care of someone else in the middle of a pandemic. I'll carry that memory to my grave with me. It was inspiring, and it reinforces the fact that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're doing what we're called to do. When you watch someone else get involved with your business vicariously, the charity side of our business, but our business nonetheless, it was one of those surreal moments that will be tucked away forever.
Wow. That's incredible, Mark. That's why we do what we do in terms of working with small businesses and that ripple effect that you just talked about, Mark. It's just incredible the impact that all small businesses can have, right, in the community, because when they have a heart like you've just described, and know that there's a bigger purpose and there's a greater reason why we're all here, and we help each other through the tough times. I started this interview by saying that when all small businesses are strong, the economy is strong. And based on your story, I'll expand that to not just the economy, but the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
When small businesses are strong, the community is strong because they're doing the things that you just described. So thank you so much for following what God's called you to do. For those listening, this does conclude the interview. If you've heard something that is intriguing to you or inspiring to you, and how could it not be, please take a look at the information that I'll include with this. We'll provide links to Mark's, the companies that Mark described. We'll also provide a link to the charity. Please reach out. If you're able to give, take advantage of that opportunity to give. If you're in need, please go to one of the pantries and take what you need. Mark, it's just been an absolute pleasure learning about you and your business and your charity. And I wish you tremendous success, my friend.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
Awesome. Well, have yourself a wonderful day.
Thanks, you too.